Hello again, lesson 9 homework, more rounding. But for this rounding, you're going to use your place value understanding rather than the vertical number lines. Now, that being said, any tool that you have learned, the place value chart, number bonds, the vertical number line, any strategy or tool that you have learned, you can use. So even though in this lesson they want you to use your place value understanding, the 10 times rule, the periods, the ones, tens, hundreds pattern for the ones period, the thousands period, the millions period, all of the things you've learned, they want you to use. But any tool or strategy that you've learned, you should use as well. So that being said, let's get started. So for the first few questions, they're asking you to round to the nearest 1,000. And in A, it's kind of easy because it's to the thousands place. And what do you think if you visualized the vertical number line? It would either be 6,000 or 7,000. So what do you think this is closer to? And it is closer to 7,000 than it is to 6,000. So that was what we would round it to. In 16,000, we have to just look at the 6. So this would either be rounded to 16,000 or 17,000. Well, it's much closer to 16,000, isn't it? In this number, if we look at 2,700, we would have 2,000 at the bottom of the vertical number line and 3,000 at the top. And what is this closer to, 2,000 or 3,000? Well, it's closer to 3,000. And this is tricky because we have 6 digits, but we're only looking at the thousands place, so the 6,000. So is that closer to 6,000 or 7,000? And that is closer to 6,000, so 706,000. And they're going to ask how you got your answer to part D, and this is how I did it. But you may have drawn a vertical number line, you may have used a regular number line, you may have used your number sense in a different way that I did. So this is just an example. You do not have to write this, and if you write it exactly, I'm going to know you copied it. So you should be explaining your own thinking for how you answered D, this. And what I said is I looked at the thousands place and saw it was 6,000. Then I looked at the hundreds place and saw it was 400. 6,400 is closer to 6,000. I rounded to 706,000. So that was my thinking, but obviously I'm older than you and I have a little more experience. So that is how I explained it. Now, I'm not sure that my explanation was complete because I might have said it's closer to 6,000 than to 7,000. I might have added that in. So you need to do your own work and explain how you got the answer to D. Okay? Now we're rounding to the nearest 10,000. So if we look in the 10,000s place, it's 80,000 or 90,000. And this is closer to 90,000. If we look at the 10,000s place, we have 8. So we have 80,000 or 90,000. This is closer to 90,000. We have 80,000 again, so either 80,000 or 90,000. And this is a tricky one because it's just a little bit over halfway. So it's 90,000. And, we have a 0 in the 10,000s place. So is it closer to 900,000 or 910,000? Again, just a little bit over, but 910,000. Now, you can see that A and B have the same answer. They don't tell you that it's A and B. It says explain why 2 problems have the same answer. And this is one of those times where if you're looking at your answers and you don't have 2 answers that are the same, well, right away you need to go back and check A, B, C, and D. And hope that you get 2 answers that are the same, which I did, which was 90,000 and 90,000. And write another number that has the same answer when it's rounded. Oh. So what other number could round to 90,000? Now, there are a lot of them. So I'm hoping that we're going to get 15 different numbers, if that's even possible. And I think it might be. So what you could say is A and B have the same answer because 88,000 is closer to 90,000 than 80,000, and 85,001 is closer to 90,000 than to 80,000. So another number that would round to 90,000 would be 87,000. Now, I could put a lot of different digits in the ones, tens, and hundreds. I just chose to keep them zeros for simplicity's sake. But I'm thinking we could get 15 different answers for another number that could round to 90,000. I can't wait to see what you all do. Now we're rounding to the 100,000, and well, we can't round about this, so the nearest 100,000 would be 100,000, because that is the closest. 600,000. Well, is it closer to 600,000 or 700,000? I'm thinking on a vertical number line, this would be closer to 600,000. So I'm visualizing the vertical number line while I'm doing this. 700,000. So it could either be 700,000 or 800,000. Where would this number fall? Would it be closer to 700,000 or 800,000? 800,000. 800,017. Would that be closer to 800,000 or 900,000? 800,000. Oh, look, we have two answers that are the same again. And again, if you don't have two problems that have the same answer, double check. And we're going to write another number that could be rounded to 800,000. So B and D have the same answer because 751,447 rounds up to 800,000, and 817, 245 rounds down to 800,000. Another number that would round to 800,000 would be 821,000. And again, I think we could get 15 different answers. Okay, so this is a little bit tricky. So at President Obama's inauguration, and that's when he takes the oath that he's going to be the president and he is going to keep the United States' best interests at heart. He holds up his hand and he says, I promise to do, and they have a whole speech that he promises in order to be president. The newspaper headline stated there were about 800,000 people in attendance. If the newspaper routed to the nearest 100,000, which it looks like they did, because it's to the 100,000s and then the rest of the digits are zeros. What is the largest number of people that could be there? And what is the smallest number of people who could have been there? Well, so what I did is, 800,000 might be the most, which means 700,000 would be the least. And it has to be a number that when it rounds, it's going to go round up to 800,000. So I thought, the least it could be is 750,000, because that is from there up would be 800,000. So I said that was the smallest. And you may disagree with me. You might have a good argument, but that's what my thinking was. And then I went from 800,000 to 900,000, and it has to stay within this area to be rounded down to 800,000. So I said 849,999, because that's right underneath 850,000. So those are the numbers that I came up with. I'd be interested to see if you got the same numbers or not, and what your reasoning is. But those are the numbers that I got. Now, at President Bush's inauguration, which again was when he took the oath of office to become president in 2005, the newspaper headline stated that there were about 400,000 people in attendance. If the newspaper rounded to the nearest 10,000, what is the largest number and the smallest number of people who could have been there? Now that, to me, was a little trickier, because it looks like this is rounded to the nearest 100,000, but they're saying that it's rounded to the 10,000s place. So I kind of wrote down what I was thinking, and I said, to figure this out, you need to keep the digit 4 in the 100,000s place, right? That has to stay, because we know that we're looking at the next place. So the 4 has to be there regardless. So the 4 has to stay in the 100,000s place. And a 0 in the 10,000s place, because that has to stay a 0, correct? It can't be a different digit. That has to be a 0. So in the thousands place, the digit cannot be more than 5, or it will make the number round up. So if this is a 5, this would round up to 1, wouldn't it? So we can't have a 5. It has to be a 4. So I thought that the largest number would be 404,999, because that's as close as it can be. The 4, and the 9 would make that a 5. But with the, and that, and the smallest number would be 400,000, which because the 4 has to be there and the 0 has to be there. Now, I didn't look at the answer key, but this was my own thinking. So it'll be interesting to see if you come up with a different answer, because that's what I thought, that it had to be between those two numbers to stay at 400,000. Because we're rounding to the 10,000s place, not the 100,000. So the 4 has to stay a 4 and the 0 has to stay a 0 for it to stay 400,000. So this one was a little trickier. And I think I thought it through, but it'll be interesting. Maybe I should look at the answer key, but I think I like doing the homework myself with you, and let's see what happens. So at President Lincoln's, Abraham Lincoln's inauguration, it was in 1861. The newspaper headline stated that there were about 30,000 people in attendance. So not as many, by a long shot. If the newspaper rounded to the nearest 1,000, what is the largest number and the smallest number? Now, again, we're rounding to the thousands place. So we have to keep the 10,000s place a 3. So to figure this out, you need to keep the digit 3 in the 10,000s place and a 0 in the thousands. So it has to stay 30,000. It's the other digits that can change. So in the hundreds place, the digit cannot be more than 5, or it's going to make it round up. So my thinking is that the largest number of people that could have been in attendance would be 30,499, and the smallest would be 30,000. So these two are similar, but I think it's tricky that they had us for the 400,000, it was to the 10,000s place, and for 30,000, it was to the thousands place. That's a little tricky thinking. So those are the word problems that they give. This number 4, A, B, and C are stretching you and seeing how you do. So they're much higher level thinking, and if you don't get them, that's okay. We really just want to know that you can round. So we really need to know that you can do 1, 2, and 3. And 4, A, B, and C are really just to see, can you do that little extra stretch of your brain? And if not, that's okay. We will get there. But as long as you have 1, 2, and 3 done, well, you're well on your way to being a wonderful math person. And we're very proud of your hard work. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.